Yay, we're live.
Live.
And we're live. After much toil, we're finally live on the wrong channel in the YouTube reverse. Whatever. All right, I'm going to play this intro and then we can get moving. News, ops, and a little bit of paranoia. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin podcast. Welcome, everyone, to tonight's episode of the Iron Sysadmin podcast, which, after a very rocky start, we're finally live. I'm your host, Nate. I have one of my usual co-hosts with me, Jason, and our special guest tonight, Georgia Weidman.
Hi.
Say hi, Georgia. So, I think we'll just head right into an interview first, and then we'll handle the news later. So, Georgia, you want to tell the people a little bit about you in case they don't already know?
Okay, well, I am Georgia, and let's see. I have a couple of companies. I have Bulb Security LLC, which is my consulting company where we do pen testing and training, and that's where all my book money goes and things like that. So we do, some research as well for clients. So that's kind of my catch-all. And then I also have a company called Shavira, which when you're starting a company, you should definitely come up with a name that no one can either say or spell. That is great branding right there. So there's your, little bit of business advice from probably the worst business person ever. So take it as you will. But at Shavira, we do actually mobile security testing products. So all the consulting is on one company and all the products are on the other. So you might possibly, if you've heard of me, remember my smartphone pen test framework that I did through DARPA Cyber Fast Track a while back as a research project. So at Shavira, we've actually productized that. So, APIs and front ends and automation and integration with SIMs and all those things that you don't have to do for like a security tool, but you do for a product. So we do, everything from mobile phishing over, text message or WhatsApp or any other way you might think about being phished, like near field communication or Bluetooth, sky is the limit, rogue cell towers. So we do that. We also do penetration testing. So, any of the vulnerabilities that are out there, testing those, as well as the post-exploitation side. We've got a lot of, security products that are out there for mobile. And it's like, okay, I'm a user or a corporate user. And I'm like, so what do I need to buy? Does this actually provide me like the stuff it says on the back of the box? So we can help you with that. Yeah. So
Cool.
kind of like do the testing. Let's see. I'm also an author. I wrote Penetration Testing, a hands-on introduction to hacking. Currently working on the second edition, and that should hopefully be out very soon. And let's see. I'm also a trainer, so I've done like training at places like Black Hat and places like I did a class at NSA once. So I do private corporate trainings as well as at conferences, and I'm also an instructor, I guess it's called an adjunct professor at Tulane and University of Maryland, University College. So like one of the University of Maryland colleges. Let's see, what else do? I do security research. So from time to time, you can find me on stages at conferences. I'm keynoting Carbon Black Connect in a couple of weeks in San Diego. Let's see, what else do? I'm also a what is it called? Cybersecurity Policy Fellow at New America. So my primary focus there is Internet of Things, but they're really cool. They do a lot of good projects over there. So that's all I can think of right now. But
well, it was quite the list.
Sorry, did you want me to talk for like 30 seconds and then
No. That is perfectly fine. I remember seeing I think I've been in 2 or maybe 3 of your talks in person at conferences, all about mobile security, and each one of them made me want to put my phone into a Faraday cage to put it back in my pocket. So yeah, some pretty interesting stuff you were doing back then. I haven't seen one of your talks in quite a while, but I'm glad to see that it's blossomed into so much more. I do remember an early talk you did on your mobile penetration testing kit And that sounded pretty cool then, and sounds like it's grown quite a bit since then. So cool. Good work.
Thank you.
So, Jason, I think you have more questions lined up for Georgia than I do. Now that the intro's out of the way, do you want to go ahead and go down whatever path you had in mind?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of want to talk about the company a little bit. I know you've got Bulb and you've got Shavira. I know you went through Mach 37, and at least one of those was sort of a DARPA grant type setup. I mean, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I did the DARPA Cyber Fast Track back in 2012, and that was a really awesome program. I really wish they would bring it back, especially, now that I'm a startup and it's like I need to be like getting government grant kind of stuff. I think we didn't realize, a lot of us, I'm sure some people did, like how great the DARPA program was, because, the application was really not that hard, and, they turned it around really fast. Whereas, if you're getting like an SBIR grant, which I couldn't even tell you what that stands for, small business something research probably, the kind of grants that people are looking for in the government, you basically have to have somebody on staff who's like an expert at writing those, and it takes like forever to get them. A company can live and die waiting for government stuff. Certainly it's awesome when you get it. You can get a lot of really good money there, but you can live and die like waiting for it to happen. So DARPA Cyber Fast Track was great because it kind of like bypassed that. So, thank you to Mudge for that. That was really great. It wasn't just me. You look at, a lot of people who are doing really great things in security now, and they went through that program. So that was, just a research project. I was doing, stuff for the community. So I released it open source as the smartphone pen test framework, the original version of, we're going to test phones the same way we do like computers and routers and things. We're actually going to do the same kind of testing, instead of just like being like, okay, this is a mobile security product now, it'll solve all your problems all as well, actually have the testing side of it. And so, yeah, I guess it was 2015, I went to an accelerator called Mach 37 in the DC area. And, a lot of people that I knew from the community had done it. Like JP Bourget did it. Marcus Carey did it. A few other people that I'm probably forgetting. G. Mark Hardy did it. Joe Klein did it. A lot of people who are well respected in our community had gone through it and said that, maybe I should do it. And I was like, well, I have this like small business and I suck at business. So this sounds like a great way for me to learn more about business, as well as, learn how to, I guess, bridge that gap from here's my security tool to like, how do I get it one in the kind of shape that companies would buy it to, use either in their pen testing practice or, on-site security teams using it to assess their security, things like that, as well as, finding out, how do you get like in the room for that sort of thing? Because through my consulting, pretty much people had almost always been inbound. They've been coming to me, or it had been subcontracting. So people I knew, needed more people or sent stuff to me. So being able to like change that into, me being able to get the meetings with like, the security team of Fortune, 100 companies, and, getting them to say yes, being able to, I guess, jump through the hoops necessary for that. So, I learned a lot at Mach 37. It was like kind of like a crash course in everything business side in like 3 months. And I met a lot of really great people. I knew a lot of people in the security community, but now, especially here in the DC area, because I actually have moved back full time to the DC area. And I just met a lot of people in the like startup community, people who had, more experience on that side, maybe not as much in cybersecurity per se. So, it allowed me to, I guess, meet people who could help me in other ways. And yeah, it's been really good. So yeah, I started Shavira, like kind of like spun out smartphone pen test framework into a separate company, Shavira. So yeah, things have been really good. We've gotten some really good customers. We've gotten, the products moved forward really well. We got some startup funding as well, from individual angels, as well as some, some like angel funds kind of things. So like smaller VC firms that do, the early stage investing. So yeah, I've learned a lot from the experience. I mean, I'm certainly like ready to, I think, at some point have it acquired and go inside of a bigger company that has, more salespeople, more developers and whatnot than I have. But I definitely would still want to be involved in it. So they'd be buying me as well as the products. So, but yeah, it's been really interesting. I've really learned a lot of it.
From a startup perspective, is that sort of a goal to sort of get a thing up and running and then get it sold to a larger company? And I'm not asking this as a judgment or anything toward what you're doing. I'm just curious from a business perspective.
Well,
Like, is that a normal thing, or is that like no, I want this to be my own thing and
it
my
really
baby?
depends. I mean, some people really do want to, take it all the way, which, I guess the right way to look at it is run it as though you're going to take it all the way yourself. But, if you, I mean, I have to take into account that, I've learned a lot about business, but, I'm never going to be as good at business as I am at, say, security research. So,
Right.
I mean, ultimately, I think, I'm happier and I'm more effective when I'm spending more of my time on like doing the research and finding the new ways to, get into things and adding them to the products and say doing a bunch of sales calls and changing the colors on the user interface. So, I mean, really, it's just, the right place for me. And I think, the right place for the product would be in a place with more, structure or infrastructure really than, I'm able to give it. I mean, some people want to go all the way to IPO and still be like CEO of their own company. Usually, especially with technical founders, it actually doesn't get that far. Your board will vote you out long before that. Because, evangelist and founder kind of person. But, you can either, try and take it all the way to IPO yourself and do, multiple funding rounds and things like that, or, get it to a point and then, start looking for, acquisitions for good places where it would be a good fit, to come together with, other products. Like, I mean, for me, it's, we kind of have a few areas we could fit in well, phishing products that are just doing email for like security awareness training, being able to throw all our mobile stuff in so they can address additional things, and we get that structure. Certainly anything that does penetration testing, your Metasploits or anything like that, anybody who's doing red teaming or any of those products, we would be obviously a good fit there, as well as anybody who's doing mobile security preventative projects, any of your mobile threat defenses or anything like that, having this sort of more like active attack to like prove that it stops it kind of thing, that would be a good augmentation. So, you either, like I said, keep it forever until, IPO, and then you all get rich and, you go on forever. But
I guess I know so little about the business aspect of anything. I mean, I've never run a large business. I've never even got anything to the point where I thought it would be, viable, other than a couple hobbies, you know what I mean? So I was just kind of curious by that statement. That's all. I know some people want to just keep things their own, and others, their goal may be to make something attractive that they can sell off.
Yeah, I mean,
I've heard that it's actually a pretty big problem for entrepreneurs, because there's a lot of thrill involved in getting something off the ground, and then they get bored, once it's down to the minutia of managing a business. So I guess that makes a lot of sense. All right, cool.
So I mean, you took your mobile pen testing framework and turned it into a company. So I mean, good on you.
Right.
Where is that? Where do you see that going moving forward? Like what I guess what's the state of mobile today? I mean, where do you see like the bigger issues, and what do you sort of target with your framework?
Well, I think that we're actually in a very interesting place in mobility and IoT and cloud, all those kind of like next gen-y things that kind of put in, one box. They kind of, I think, have a lot of the same problems. We very early on kind of like, I guess you could say that, if anybody had, say, an antivirus or anti this or an anti that, they basically, would put the word mobile in front of it and then, be able to make more money. And I think, that went on for a really long time. And certainly there have always been companies that have been, doing preventative security well, be it in mobile or whatnot. A lot of the problem turns into that, it isn't probably the biggest thing I've learned through this whole like business thing is that, you don't necessarily get customers or do well just because your product is solving an important problem, or if it's the best at it or anything. I mean, a lot of it comes down to, you know, sales and marketing and timing. Like, you know, I was always like that one who was like, mobile, mobile, mobile. And everybody's like, shut up about mobile. It's not that big a deal. So, you know, being the first one or an early one into your market isn't necessarily a good thing. So I've had a lot of time to, you know, advance my products and make them mature because I've had a ton of time. But that's also, you know, kind of slowed me down because clients were just, you know, at this point, you kind of have to like educate the market about why this is important. Which, you know, to a security person, it's like, well, I do mobile security research and I do pen testing. When I do pen testing, nobody does anything around mobile. Obviously, the attackers do, so it just seems like a no-brainer. But, you know, to your, you know, average person who might be buying this, maybe not so much. But anyway, to actually answer your question, so I think now that we have like the category in Gartner of mobile threat defense, I think, you know, at least, you know, I've partnered with a lot of these companies, and I'm actually seeing like them stopping a lot of attacks. I mean, everybody who puts on the back of their box, we stop 0 days and 100% of attacks, they're bad, they're part of the problem. But I am starting to see products from the preventative side that are actually, you know, stopping a lot of attacks, or at least putting up an alert for the user to, you know, make the decision, or the admin to make the decision. Whereas, you know, if you'd asked me that like 3 to 5 years ago, I would have said most of it was completely useless. So we are finally seeing one that, you know, customers are waking up to the fact that just because it says on the back of the box that it stops the attacks, that, you know, in the extreme, you have applications that you install on your device that periodically wake up and they check whether they themselves are a virus because they're sandboxed, so they can't see anybody else. So that's, you know, an extreme of not doing anything useful. But, you know, now we've got things that, you know, are hooked into like, you know, the mobile device management APIs and becoming administrators. So they are able to see a lot more. And, you know, they are really taking it seriously, looking at, you know, the kinds of attacks that people are really getting. So we are seeing definitely things moving forward in the preventative space. And, you know, that's definitely helpful for my product, because I get, you know, customers who are like, well, we want to buy like the right stuff to solve this problem. Help us do it. And that I'm certainly able to do that. And you've also got, you know, the preventative products being like, I want to do a good job. I can partner with you and you'll like throw the real attacks and we'll be able to see whether we can catch it. And if not, we'll work together to make it so that we can. So just, I think that people are taking mobile security a lot more seriously, perhaps because we have seen it, you know, with like NSO Group, for instance, who's, you know, out there throwing, you know, really scary iOS stuff at, you know, political dissidents, you know, depending on what country you're in, they're either like a human rights activist or a political dissident. So, you know, you take that how you will, but, you know, kind
Funny
of like
how that distinction works.
Right. So we've been seeing, you know, they're actually showing up in the news. So I think people are kind of, and then waking up to the fact that, you know, even, I mean, especially with phishing, you know, you got Podesta and all them with their emails. I mean, certainly, you know, if people are still clicking on links in emails, why wouldn't they click on a link in a text message or a direct message or Facebook message or WhatsApp message? You know, any way you can send a link is ways that, you know, people can be targeted. So I think people are waking up to that. And I mean, that's just the biggest thing, is the education of the market. And certainly, you know, one person with my mobile flag has not been enough to do that. But, you know, as the media is talking about it more, as, you know, the preventative products have been, I guess, trying to differentiate themselves more, you know, it's getting talked about a lot more that there are. And again, not just around mobile, but, you know, I really think that IoT is in the same box, and cloud as well. You know, it's things that, particularly with bring your own device, like I think bring your own device and cloud are like almost identical in terms of the problem you have. It's like somebody else's stuff. They have to patch it out there in the cloud. You know, they might have missing Windows patches or default passwords, and then all your stuff is just sitting there. So I think it's really similar in terms of like, we as the security team at a company don't have complete control over this thing. We don't really know as much about it as we would like to, and yet we still have to work with it.
You can totally trust the cloud vendors. They have your back.
Well, I got an email today from like G Suite that was like, so because of like backwards compatibility. We may just have some of your like passwords in plain text in our database. So I was like, really?
Well, it was.
I believe the technical term for that is oops.
Yeah. Oops.
Facebook got caught with that like a month ago, wasn't it? 2 months ago, maybe now.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, they were in the news.
I see those stories, and I on the one hand I'm like, well, you guys should know better. Your Google or your Facebook or your insert big company here, and on the other hand, I have to think like it was only available internally, and they admitted it, and like, is it really that bad? Like it gets blown out of proportion a lot of times. So
well, I mean, anybody being able to see my password is bad. It's the scope of bad is what changes. If the world can see my password, that's a much worse bad than if some desk jockey at Facebook could get it.
Right, but if you think about it, somebody who works for the company, like you run an email server, do you need the password of any of your users to impersonate them?
No, but until that person gets disgruntled and leaves and they walk out the door with a pile of plain text passwords, it's a lot harder to walk out the door with a dump of all the mailboxes.
I think the threat landscape there is much smaller than the media makes it out to be. So I mean, you're incredibly passionate about mobile. So what is it about mobile that sort of gets you going, that makes you so? I mean, ever since I've sort of known about you, you've kind of been in the mobile space.
Yep.
So what is it about mobile that really gets you going?
I mean, I often think that, post Shavira, I'll just like do something completely different, and just people will be like, what? You're just talking about something besides mobile? Oh my God. But really, I mean, I kind of fell into it. It was like, I did my first talk, the first talk I ever submitted was to ShmooCon, and it got in for, whatever reason. It was kind of a naive thing to do, to be like, oh, here's one of the like most prestigious cons in the world. I, as a first time speaker who's never done security research before, I was turning this thing I was working on.
You never know, take a try.
Yeah. And I got in, and that just so happened to be like a mobile thing that I was working on, and then it kind of became what I was known for, and I kept working on it. I mean, this mobile was kind of the new frontier at the time, and so yeah, I've just really kind of focused on it. I don't know that, I mean, there was no, I mean, I guess you could look at my career trajectory and think that it was really like well thought out, but it was more like, random like darts being thrown at a board to see what would stick.
Okay, that's how I got into IT. I mean, these computer things were neat, and then it turned into a career. I'm like, wait, how'd that happen?
I know exactly how you feel. I was attempting to go towards game development, and sort of fell into networking and systems and security, and I sort of do all that stuff now. So what do you run on? What kind of a phone do you carry around with you? Like, what do you consider to be?
That's a good
decent,
question.
Secure,
she's like,
usable?
I have a flip phone because I don't trust any of them.
I kind of am in the opposite direction. People ask me all the time, like, for security tips, and like, I can give people security tips, but they're always like, what do you do around security? And I'm like, almost nothing. I mean, certainly with my like customer data and things like that, obviously I'm more careful, but in terms of like me in my everyday life, I probably break like all the security rules, because, if I really stopped to think about it and did like everything I knew I was supposed to do, I wouldn't do anything besides like change my passwords and connect to different things and, update things. And it's just like, you can't live like that. And I've actually been pretty successful, but I know I'm like painting a target on my back right now, like, come hack my stuff. But I mean, I've not really had a problem.
It's not much different than most security people that I've talked to that preach, use antivirus and set up firewalls. And then you go and you ask them like, well, what are you doing? Like, well, I just sort of run vanilla this, and I don't bother.
I don't have time for any of that crap.
Antivirus slows things down, and so.
What's that old saying? The shoemaker's kids have no shoes.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, that's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I have all my like corporate like user data stuff like separate, and that's all like not on anything that I'm like screwing with malware and Facebook and things on. But, you know, in my like day-to-day use stuff, I'm like, really, you know, I see these people that are like, you know, they'll like take their plane ticket and like rip it into all these pieces and put it in like different trash cans. And I'm like, dude, I just don't care that much if people know about my life. I really don't.
Yeah, I used to be that way, and it's too much trouble to.
I've done that
all
with
those different trash cans to empty.
like if I shred a check or something, I'm like, wait, all the pieces are in the same can. If somebody got that can, they'd have the whole thing.
Like, yeah, I don't, you know, I haven't really had that many problems with it, and I imagine
I
that's
don't think
probably
anybody
random. My
just
dad does.
Your brain
My
gets.
dad always gets his credit card hacks. I don't know what he's doing, but like he's always having to get a new credit card, and I'm like, I put my credit card into the shady sites imaginable and never have a problem.
Well, Jason here has a good story about how his bank card got hacked before it ever even got to him.
Oh yeah, well, it happened again last week, but
you're kidding.
Yeah, I had
Almost got it in for you.
I had this was years ago. I had a card that got compromised somehow. I don't even remember what it was.
I mean, you and I were still working together because you were telling me about it on the commute home.
Yep, and I caught it and contacted the bank, and I'm like, hey, I don't know what this is, but it ain't me. And I, you know, went through the whole thing, and they're like, okay, we'll mark it as fraud, and we'll send you a new card. And must have been like 3 or 4 days later. I log into my bank account. I haven't gotten the new card yet. I log into the bank account. I'm like, call my wife. I'm like, hey, did you spend like $400 at Walmart in, you know, Philly? She's like, no. I'm like, okay. So I call the bank. I'm like, hey, I'm not sure what's going on, but this charge is not us. And they sort of push back a little bit. They're like, well, wait, you know, like it's your card. I'm like, I haven't gotten the card yet.
Yeah.
They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I put in for a new card last week. They're like, oh, we've got it. We'll take care of it. And it was in that voice of like, we know who did this. They're about to go to jail. And
nice.
And you know, the charge went away and I got my new card and everything was great. You know, but it happens. I mean, my card got compromised last week. I have no clue how the hell it got compromised. You know, just a charge in the middle of Jersey somewhere at a store that was BJ's. I don't even have a membership to BJ's, so I don't, you know. And
in New Jersey, no less. Ugh.
Yeah, and they've gotten better because they called me.
Injury.
They called me, and you know, they're like, "Hey, is this your charge?" I'm like, "I don't live there," and no. And they're like, "Okay, so we canceled your card. You're gonna have to go get a new one." And I went, "Yay!" Now I get to change all my accounts again. So you know, security's fun, but some of it's getting better. I mean, the fraud stuff's getting a little bit better. It's frustrating, but.
Well, to answer the other part of your question, like what phone do I use? Actually, one of the biggest perks I have is that because one of the things I do is, you know, do research for other companies, and I get a lot of stuff on mobile, so they often buy me like multiples of like the latest phones. So, and then I get to keep them afterwards. They never ask for them back. So, you know, if you want to be my friend, it's a good way to get like extra phones that are lying around because they have like 8 S8s.
Now we know. Now we know why she got into mobile testing, because she gets free phones.
Free phone. Phones are expensive, man.
Yeah, and the people at the stores are always like, "Why do you want 8 iPhones?" And I'm like, "Cause I'm cool like that."
So have you tested the Galaxy Fold yet?
I have not. That has not come up yet.
Because they're afraid to give it to anybody yet. The last people they gave it to all found all the problems with it, and they weren't trying to penetration test it. They were just trying to use it.
Yeah, that's generally how it goes. I mean, I tell people that the reason that I'm, I guess, kind of good at my job is because I'm actually terrible at using technology. So I use it wrong, and that finds the problems. It's like, you know, I mean, I hate to say that because, you know, I'm a girl and stuff, and, you know, they already say girls can't computer, but I'm like, I actually cannot computer. And that's why I am able to find all the problems, because I use it wrong.
That's
valid. I mean, you say girls can't computer, but then you turned around and wrote a book about pen testing that you know, I've seen at least probably half a dozen tweets about how they're using it as a college textbook at this point. So,
yeah,
I mean, I have a copy on my bookshelf. My son has already gone through it and sort of devoured it. I mean, kudos. It is a really great book, and you're working on version 2, I believe.
I am working on version 2, and version 2 is going to be more than twice as good as the original, and it's going to have, technology has moved forward such that we can have, better, I guess, tie-ins. So make it easier to do your labs, so you don't have to, set everything up if you don't want to. We've got some things and, ability to like continue forward, after you've done the book, and kind of like grow organically with like tie-ins online and things. So yeah,
cool.
edition 2 is going to be awesome. But yeah, the book stuff, it was like, I guess people thought I was a security book, and wanted is the book that I wished I had when I was starting security. When I started, well, my mom has a PhD in computer science, so when I say girls can't computer, I say it with my tongue out. I just can't enunciate with my tongue out, so just imagine that my tongue is out.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I obviously knew that girls could computer because, I'd seen my mom, and all my mom's friends were also like computer scientists who were female, so that never really worked on me, the girls can't computer. But when I started in security, I didn't really know that many people yet, if at all. I knew a few. But, I tried to take the OS Defensive Security Certified Professional test and the course before it. And, it was a really great course, but there was like a lot of knowledge that I didn't have yet. I knew a little bit about Linux, and I knew a little bit about this, and I knew a little bit about that, compared to the person on the street. I was the person they called to fix the computer, but like, I still felt like I didn't really have all the knowledge that was expected of me for that. And, I would, if you try and ask for help, they literally have something that writes back at you that says try harder, which now as a business person, I really get. I mean, one, in the hacker community, this idea of like being super elite is, a big thing. So, I mean, that works for, their brand, but also they don't have to pay people for like help. So, they're making more money that way. So I totally get it. But, I didn't feel like I got as much out of, though I passed the test on my second try, I will admit it. I think I did about the same on both. So I don't know if they just, let you pass the second time. But, I didn't feel like I got as much out of the course part, like, because there were all the like lab machines, and there were some of them I just didn't get. And I feel like while I passed the test, I feel like there were probably some like techniques and things that I didn't know that I probably should have, like that I would have if I gotten all the lab machines. So, I kind of really struggled in the beginning with that sort of thing. So, I wanted to write the book that I wished I'd had when I was going through that course. So every time somebody writes me and they're like, your book is the only reason I passed OSCP, I mean, part of me is like, well, I got maybe $3, $8. I don't know. You'd have to add it up what actually I get in royalties, and offensive security got like $1,500 of your dollars. So obviously I'm not doing this business thing right here, but it does fill me with a sense of pride that, I did accomplish, that goal, that it has allowed people to have an easier way into InfoSec. And certainly, in the time since, because it's been out for 4 years, which makes me feel really old, and is why I need to get the second edition out. But I mean, there's certainly, a lot more beginner friendly stuff online now, and there's, other courses and other like things that are hosted in the cloud for like VMs for people to try. But I mean, certainly, like, and especially like in other countries, like, it got translated into Portuguese. So when I like went to Brazil, they don't get a lot of tech books in their, native tongue. So I apparently have a lot of Brazilian fans.
That's pretty cool.
Which was cool. Yeah. It was really hot there, though.
I don't know if Iron Sysadmin has any Brazilian fans.
Who?
Us.
We know
us, the podcast.
Oh, sorry. I heard like Ian Assman, and I'm like, I don't know who that is.
Iron Sysadmin. That's what I said.
Okay, Iron Sysadmin.
We have UK fans. We know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we do.
I'm not sure where else.
So, I mean, to your credit, I'd have to say that's probably the best reason to write a book. You noticed something that was missing in the industry, something you wish you had, and you fixed that. And that's awesome. That's a great reason to write a book. In fact, that's part of why I thought to start this podcast, because there weren't a lot of ops focused IT podcasts that I was able to find. There's a ton of security podcasts out there,
Of course.
but not operations, because operations isn't sexy. Right. So I wanted to fill that void when we started this show, and you wanted to fill that void when you wrote the book, and it seems like you did a good job. I don't know. The jury's still out on whether we did a good job or not.
Well, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about Tribe of Hackers at some point, but I was doing another interview for Tribe of Hackers recently, and it did ask, like, if you had to be blue team, like, what would you be, like, the first thing you did? And I was like, well, one, I would, like, run screaming into the night and become a janitor, because, like, blue team is just so hard. I did it when I first got out of college. And, we just ran up against so much of, like, we didn't have the power. It was like everybody had more power than us. So it was like, we really need to fix this. People were like, no, won't. And then, they were, like, higher up the food chain. So it was like, there was, the pushback from, just about everybody else, as well as, not having enough budget and, having to fix everything, as opposed to, me on the attacking side. I really only need to find one thing wrong. So I really have a lot of respect for people who do, the operations and the defensive side. Like, you guys have, like, the most thankless and the most important job that's keeping, things running in the world. If it's not people like me who are like, I broke this thing. It's people who are, day to day, like, grinding out, keeping things running with, people are like, oh, you're just so cool. But nobody ever says that about the, defensive operations people. But you guys are the really cool ones.
I think
that's appreciated.
The best compliment I've ever heard. So a buddy of mine and Nate knows him as well. Switched from red teaming. Sort of gave up a lot of travel, so he kind of wanted to spend time with his family. So he switched over to a blue team job, and I think he was only doing less than a month. And I was chatting with him, and he sort of looked at me and said, he's like, I'm blue team now. How the hell do you guys do this? This is insane.
Yeah.
And I kind of went, I don't know. It just,
we just do.
That's my job. Like,
just the way we do it.
Is it that hard? So
comparatively, it is definitely.
So you mentioned Tribe of Hackers. So I will ease into moving over to that topic now. Yeah, it's a great transition. So you mentioned Marcus Carey earlier, doing Mach 37 as well, and I believe he's central to this whole Tribe of Hackers thing. So why don't you give us sort of an overview of what that was and what your contribution was?
Well, I get asked to do, like, interviews for people who are doing, like, a website or a book or whatever all the time. So, it was Marcus and I knew him. So, I did it. I answered some questions, but, as usual, I kind of forgot about it. And then, like, maybe like 9 months later. So, it's like the book was coming out and they were donating everything to charity. And, like, a lot of people were talking about it. And I was like, whoa, this is, like, huge. He's going to have more sales than I do. Because, we're so competitive in this industry. But, it's, I think there's, like, about 70 people in it. And it's people from, the offensive side, the defensive side, research, people from all over the world. And, he really focused on, it not all being white dudes. So, there's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of women. And of course, people are like, oh, I didn't get included. That book is stupid. But I don't know, I was happy to be included. And I know, if we took everybody who deserved to be in a book about hackers, we would have a book that spanned from one side of this room to the other at the very least. So, it happened.
It sounds like he's doing another, if I understood correctly, it sounds like there's another book coming out with another set of hackers, potentially, but I'm not, I may be misunderstanding what he's up to.
I'm not entirely sure what's been made public. There's definitely going to be more, but I'm not really sure how much he said about it. But this is not the end of Tribe of Hackers for sure. So
no. Oh, yeah. I mean, it clearly, something maybe we don't, but
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
not
I
sure
definitely
what
heard.
he's made public yet, so I won't
Yeah,
say.
there's definitely I can't remember where I saw it, but there was definitely a note that there was more coming. I mean, I wasn't in the first book. I still think the first book was brilliant, so maybe I'll make it into book 50 or 60 or so. But in in addition to the book, it sounds like he turned it into, or it sounds like he turned it into a conference as well.
It doesn't sound like it. It happened.
Yeah, no, it happened. Yeah.
It happened.
So, which was last month, I believe.
Yeah, or maybe it was
Yeah, I think it was
very.
maybe it was the beginning of the month.
The very end of May, or the very beginning of May. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And
Jason,
and
did you include a link to the YouTube recording in the
I
show
will.
notes?
I will.
We'll have to make sure we add that because there were some really good talks in there. I tuned into it just to see your talk in preparation for this show, and I ended up getting sucked in and watching 3 hours of it. So
yeah, the YouTube link may be like 6 hours long.
Yeah, yeah. Someone needs to hire an editor.
Yeah, but hey, I mean, it was it's good because you end up watching a lot of really good talks.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was good stuff.
But you gave what sounded like a brilliant talk. And I really enjoyed it. So I would love to hear what you thought of the audience response and sort of what you talked about.
Well, yeah, the Tribe of Hackers Summit was a really interesting conference because it was, kind of had the same aims as the book, like, helping people get into security. So I've always done, very, very technical talks. I mean, I've done keynotes where you kind of have to, a little higher level, but I mean, I'm still talking like really tech. And so this was going to be the first talk that I'd ever given that, wasn't technical. But I thought this was the right venue for it because it was, a lot of like, how do people get into security? And, I wanted to do kind of like, well, this was kind of my path and it's completely random, but, if I can do it, anybody can, kind of thing. Like, talking about my journey and, how everybody's journey is going to be different. So yeah, I definitely went over time a little bit on it. And I also definitely forgot my lines in the middle of it. And apparently nobody noticed, but I did. So I just kind of like started making it up as I went along, about 15 minutes in. But yeah, I talked about my, I guess, background of I did have my mom who had a PhD in computer science, but I was also from Mississippi, so I always say I'm lucky I can read. But yeah, I talked about how I got into security, and I talked about some of the dark stuff as well. I talked about like Me Too and things like that. I talked about I actually even put up like I mean, what was it? Those people, I can't even remember what they're called. The like Ilmob people who like the reporter wrote me and sent me like the screenshots from it. And like wanted to know if I had any comment on it. So I actually like had them in the deck and was like reading off what people said. And I'm like, the sad thing is at this point, this doesn't even really bother me anymore because people have just like slung things at me so many times that I'm like, if they haven't destroyed my career yet. But I guess the point was,
unfortunate side effect of being on the internet, it seems.
Yeah,
definitely. The higher profile you are, the bigger target you are, and the more violent people get. I get the same thing. I run a YouTube channel that's unrelated to technology, and some of the comments I get on there are just like so hateful, and there's no reason for it. There's just no reason for it. There's no reason to hate people like that.
I feel like a lot of the distinction is that, I think everybody gets a lot of hate from like randoms hiding behind random like handles or whatever. But what I really see in InfoSec, and again, I've been in InfoSec mostly all my career, so this may be true in like every industry, but it's like, it seems like, at least for me, it's really different when like someone whose work I respect a lot and who also, has a really high profile is like using their real name and saying like, Georgia's stuff sucks or Georgia sucks or this. And I think there's a lot of that in this industry that, I kind of think we really need to get over it. We're all ultimately on the same side. Like, why do we have to have all this infighting so much? It's like our goal at the end of the day is to make the world more secure. We would be able to get a lot farther if we were all working together as opposed to like trying to tear each other down all the time.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
what's interesting about it, like, let me say one more thing about this. I don't think I said it in the talk, but when the Ilmob stuff came out, a lot of people who were like mean to me, like, you know, right after, you know, because I, you know, at a conference in 2013, I bashed a guy's head in because he tried to rape me. And then, like, I guess.
How dare you?
Yeah, I know, it was awful. I still have the coffee cup I did it with, no less. I stole it from the hotel. They should come, like, arrest me for stealing.
It's like a souvenir.
Yeah, it's a souvenir, exactly.
Okay.
But yeah, so I mean, kind of after that, like, you know, there was the whole online debate of like, is Georgia a liar who like did this for publicity, or like, did this really happen? And if this did really happen, what did Georgia do to deserve it? You know, the kind of like before Me Too, the kind of stuff that people just talked about, and it was okay to talk about it that way, and nobody really complained. But a lot of the people, like, you know, these, you know, I guess this was what, 2019, so like what, 6 years later, you know, a lot of the people who were the most vocal about Georgia sucks and everything Georgia's ever done has sucked and Georgia needs to be thrown out of the industry back then were like messaging me and being like, I'm really sorry about what happened back then. So it actually, like, by Ilmob like reigniting this, they actually like allowed me to like mend fences with people that I hadn't talked to in a really long time because I, you know, thought they were jerks. So, I mean, thank you guys at Ilmob, because, you know, now I have a lot more friends. So, yeah, that was really interesting that it was like, you know, when it kind of like reignited for like no reason other than because, you know, I tweeted something about DerbyCon shutting down, that, you know, a lot of people who had been really hard on me back then were like, I, you know, have grown up since then and realized that that was really wrong of me. I would appreciate it if you forgive me and we could be friends. And I'm like, for sure, man. So yeah, it was actually, I mean, in a lot of ways it was really nice. I mean, also it kind of sucked because it's like, you know, generally when reporters write me, I like expect it to be about something technical. I would really, you know, about fell off my chair when a reporter's like, I saw something on Facebook that I would like your input on. I thought it was a security issue. And then there's like these screenshots of all this, like, you know, R-rated stuff that like didn't even happen. I was like, oh God. So yeah, I mean, some people need to grow up, but I mean, that's, you know, I mean, there was a lot of talk about it then, that, you know, people were like, I was just in the group because it was like the only way to get like security news. And I'm like, there's a lot of ways to get security news that don't involve like, you know, having to at least be bystanders about, you know, attacking minorities and women.
Yep.
Yeah, there's I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's just the current times or if it's the you know, how social media has gone. There's a lot of shit out there now. You know, I mean, I became aware of you I think around the first DerbyCon.
Yeah, I spoke at the first DerbyCon. I did, and my little white hat that they had. Yeah.
You were running around with I think you had a camera case you were running around with, and there was rumor that you were playing with GSM stuff.
Yeah, everybody said that, but it was totally just
it was
like
your camera.
my camera case. Yeah,
it's a tie. I don't remember if we went up and talked to you or not, and like
did.
asked you about it. Did you?
I did.
Okay.
I remember it was like you and I were about to rush out the door, and I saw Georgia sitting on her camera case.
It's a good
and
chair,
man. I walked up and I'm like, what's in that case? Like, should we be afraid of that? And you're like, it's my camera. Oh, okay.
Yeah, a ton of people did at that con. They were like, what is it you have in there? And I'm like, literally, it's just my camera case and it makes a really good chair. Like, I didn't want to check it with the hotel because it's expensive, you know.
Yeah, right,
I'm it.
Yeah, so I mean, I saw you that DerbyCon, and then I think it was Nate. It was the third one.
So I did the first one, the second one, and the third one. Yeah.
Okay, so I think the third one was the ill-fated one.
Yes, the ill-fated one. Yes.
I think you came in from overseas. You had just released the mobile pen testing framework.
Yeah.
You were taking a ton of shit because it was written in Perl. Which, by the way, like, you know what? Honestly, you wrote it. They didn't, and if they didn't like it in Perl, they should have wrote their own damn framework.
Look, I've written a ton of
it. I did get it, and it's now written in Python. Thank you very much, people.
You should have picked some real obscure language and written it in that.
Yeah.
Yes, I rewrote it in brainfuck just because, you know, why not?
Yeah.
But you know what? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, like I heard all this going on, and there was a lot of hate in there, and it was, you know, all I could think was like, yeah, but she wrote it and you didn't, so I'm not sure what you're bitching about. Like, that's sort of nonsense to complain about what language she wrote it in. If you think it's bad,
I thought
go write
that was
your
ridiculous.
Well, I mean, it's really, you know, as I've, I guess, grown up more, because I mean, part of it was that I was really young then, and I mean, it did really kind of seem like the end of the world, but you know, as I've gotten older, it's kind of been like, well, I guess it wasn't the end of the world, but at the same time, you know, at the time, people are like, oh, it's no big deal, but it certainly felt like a big deal at the time. So, you know, I really, you know, watch out for people who are being attacked, and you know, if they're struggling, you know, rather than be like, you know, send them Taylor Swift lyrics like shake it off, shake it off. It's like, you know, it's not really that easy to shake it off. So I mean, I generally, you know, try and look out for something like that where, you know, people are being like, having people pile on them, again, particularly people who are like, you know, well known in the industry, like coming out and being like, your stuff sucks. It's just like, you know, that cuts you through the heart, especially if it's like somebody you've really looked up to and wanted to be like, and wish this person would be your friend, and they're like getting online and like taking everything you've done and just dissecting it into why you basically don't deserve to be in the industry. I just don't understand why people like take the time. Now I kind of laugh about it because it's like, you know, when people like, because now my stuff's compiled now that it's a product. And then like some guy from InfoSec, I don't even know who it was, but he was like working at a company we were talking about partnering with, and he like reverse engineered it and like had this list of like why Georgia's stuff is stupid. And it's like, you really took all that time out of your day to like decompile my stuff and like find things wrong with it. Really? Get a life.
I mean, I don't understand. Like, I get it. There are people in any industry who write, you know, like not great software, right?
Yeah.
There's no reason to tear them to pieces.
Yeah.
Why not help them? Why not improve the situation? Like maybe they had a great idea and they're just not a good developer. Maybe they are a good developer and need an idea. Like, why don't these people get together and like, why couldn't someone who wrote Python come to you and say, hey, I see you wrote it in Perl. That might not be a great choice. Let me help you rewrite it. Instead of tearing you to pieces. It doesn't make any sense at all.
It's way easier to tear somebody to pieces.
Yeah, it is.
So
it
like
is a
no
lot easier to
whatsoever.
rip someone down.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless, I think what you did was brilliant. I think you effectively started an industry at that point. I don't think there was another mobile pen testing framework out there.
No, there wasn't.
I mean, you know, sometimes it sucks to be first, but like you did it, and then that's just sort of how it is.
Yeah. Trendsetters have a target on their back, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And I think, I mean, one of the, you know, this is somewhat, I don't know if it's a sore subject or not, but I mean, one of the reasons that we started having some of the people on the show that we've had is because DerbyCon's been shutting down, or DerbyCon is shutting down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've been to all of them. You know, I'm a white dude, so I don't, I sort of don't fall into any of the crowd that's sort of looked down upon at any point. But I have a lot of respect for people that have gone and sort of, you know, I don't know if I can relate, but I like understand issues that people have had and whatnot. But I mean, I'm curious what your thoughts are on the whole DerbyCon shutdown. I know the shit that's out there about, you know, it's because of this person or whatever, but I mean, in general, like, do you think this is I don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot.
No,
but, I mean,
I'm ready to answer it. Well,
no, I mean, like, it's kind of like, do you think this is a good thing? It's a bad thing? Like, what's your honest like opinion of what has happened and transpired since then?
Well, I mean, first of all, you know, like, I really liked DerbyCon a lot, and it was, you know, in terms of like things that I regret in my life, like, I think, you know, things going so bad with DerbyCon is probably up there if like things I could change. But you know, again, like I guess a lot of what I learned about the Me Too movement was like, you know, how I felt after, you know, I always felt bad because, you know, I wasn't raped. So like, what did I have to be upset about? But, you know, like still I was like getting panic attacks in crowds and things like that, and kind of like, you know, on some level having a nervous breakdown. But I felt like, well, for one thing, it was like, well, I can't be crazy because the guy who says I'm lying says that I'm crazy. So if I am being a little crazy, does that mean he's right? You know, these kind of logical fallacies that you tell yourself. But, you know, with the Me Too movement, it's like, you know, people are actually talking about this stuff, and it's like, you know, other people who were in similar situations to mine were like, I felt the same way. This is normal. So, I mean, that really kind of let me take it in perspective that, you know, it wasn't just that I was being a train wreck or, you know, whatever they want to say, that it was like completely normal. And it's actually, you know, people should have been, you know, I mean, it's like, it's one thing to write on your Twitter that like, we support Georgia, rape is bad. Like, and it's, you know, actually a whole nother level to like actually be supportive of people who are like going through stuff like that. So, you know, it's, again, if I could change pretty much anything in my career, it would not be like everything came to a head at a DerbyCon, which was probably my favorite conference. All those people I like hero worshipped as I was coming up. And yeah, the fact that they all thought I was a train wreck, yeah, it probably, I'll say it right here and now, that was probably like the biggest hit ever, and it sucks. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for DerbyCon. It was one of my favorite conferences. I mean, I stopped going because basically, you know, the founders of it said I was a train wreck, so it was kind of like whatever. You know, maybe I was, but who's never been a train wreck in their life? You know, what were you doing at 22 and 23 that was so great, kind of thing. So I mean, I totally respect that, you know, them shutting down. You know, I know it's a lot of work, especially as it's gotten bigger, you know, running a con. And, you know, I think conferences in general have gotten to be a lot harder. And, you know, I respect that it is really hard. You know, you've got a lot of jerks on one side, and you've got a lot of people who are very vocal about, we don't like people being jerks to us, on the other side. And then you've got a ton of people who are just totally normal and they're like to have fun. And I think that, you know, it's really hard to be like running a conference in this climate altogether, because again, you've got, I mean, the people who are jerks are louder than ever, and the people who don't want to be treated like crap because they're female or are black or whatever are louder than ever. So I mean, I totally respect that. Like, I mean, they've all got a lot going on. I mean, when they started this, like, how many years ago, like, you know, I think that was before, like, you know, Trusted Sec even started. Now it's like, you know, a very like well-respected company. I mean, they may just not have time for it anymore, and that's perfectly acceptable. Like, I don't have any problem with it shutting down. I mean, I'm actually really sorry about it, because like, I guess in my like list of like things that would be awesome that I dreamed about, you know, I guess I kind of dreamed about the day that like I would be redeemed and that they would ask me to keynote, even though I know that would never happen. But, you know, that like things would get better to the extent that, you know, one, I would be cool enough to keynote a conference that big, and two, that they would want me. So I'm sorry that it's shutting down, because that'll never happen now. But again, I totally respect them getting shut it down. The problem that I had with it was, like, if you read the original post, you know, I mean, they said that that's not what they meant, and, you know, that's fine. But I mean, these are not media unsavvy individuals. Let's be honest. These people, you know, they know what they're doing. And, you know, the original post really made it out to seem like, you know, that it was exactly what, you know, the mob on Twitter, you know, ran with, that, you know, the women killed our fun because, you know, they don't want to be harassed at the con. And, you know, it sounds a lot like, you know, what is it, ethics in video game journalism. So I wasn't okay with the fact that they were like basically, you know, doing everything they could, you know, either on purpose or just like by not paying attention, to like incite a riot against women. I mean, you saw it, like any woman who had ever said anything against DerbyCon, you know, they were just turning into memes. You know, like they like turned that one girl into like a steamboat and called her like battle cunt or whatever. Can I say that on here? But I mean, that's what they said. And I mean, it, you know, and then, I mean, part of the reason why I tweeted, because I saw these other, you know, women who did not have the same like following as I did, had not been all through this before, and were like really upset by the amount of like hate they were getting about this. Like, and so I was like, well, maybe if I say this like kind of divisive thing that's true, then, you know, maybe that'll get some of the ire thrown at me instead. But, you know, so everybody's like, Georgia hates DerbyCon, but that's actually like the opposite of the case. Georgia's incredibly jealous of anyone who's, you know, never been called a train wreck by the founders of DerbyCon. So yeah, I love DerbyCon a lot, and I know that's probably surprising for many listeners to hear, but I guess at the end of the day, you know, that I would really wish it had turned out different than it did.
No, I think it's yeah, I mean, in a way it's surprising. In another way, it's sort of, you know, I'm sorry you didn't make it back.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
This year, but I mean, I think the CFP is still open. But, I mean,
Till the end of May.
I mean, I could always like, you know, send it a CFP under a different name. I could be Bonnie Joe Mason or something.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I saw you. I guess it was the first 3 years I saw you at DerbyCon, and I don't think I've seen a live keynote from you or a live talk from you since.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I watched the Tribe of Hackers talk. You know, I think what you presented is amazing and brilliant, and I'd like to see more. We don't apparently go to the same conferences. You know, I only have a couple that I go to.
Yeah,
well,
I mean.
I mean, Jason, what you need to do is talk the people who are organizing B-Sides Delaware into having Georgia keynote.
Oh, somehow I don't think that will happen. I mean, if you saw the I guess after the IlMob stuff came out, and the DerbyCon stuff, I did a podcast with some people I know here from the DC investing community. They had me and Josh Marpet on, and I was, you know, talking about why attacking women is bad. And you know, Josh was, I mean, you can read the transcripts online. I don't want to hate on anybody.
Yeah,
I mean,
Josh was Josh. I know.
To be on that side, I mean, you're basically arguing something that is going to make you look bad no matter what. So, I mean, good for him that, you know, he took up that gauntlet to be the other side. But, yeah, I mean, it didn't look too good on him, and I don't think he's particularly happy about that, because he would be. So somehow I doubt that I'm going to be in the
I had no idea. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring it up.
No, it's fine. I love it. I think I look great. I love that podcast.
I'm the sort of person who is very averse to drama. So whenever I see it online, I avoid it. So like I knew that there was a falling out with you and DerbyCon. I knew that there was this and there was that. I knew that you had you know, that you were attacked, and I felt very bad for you in that. But a lot of the details I've missed in a lot of these things. So hearing it all again, I mean, it really makes me almost sad that I didn't come out to support you more.
It's totally cool. Like, you didn't
throw
tomatoes at me. You're in my good list.
I didn't attack you. At least it didn't go that way.
Tomatoes are wonderful. You can make ketchup out of them. You can make sauce out of them. I mean, tomatoes are like, they do. Throw tomatoes at me. I don't have to buy them.
All right, I'll throw tomatoes at you at your next talk.
The point I was trying to make there is that I didn't know that there was any sort of conversation between you and Josh. Because I missed it. Because
actually there wasn't, because they did it in two separate interviews, so they like put it together. But yeah, well, Josh was actually through Mach 37 as well, so I had known him through the security community, and then I saw him at Mach 37 as well. But you know, I mean, I get the whole, like, you know, there were a lot of people in IlMob who weren't necessarily participating in that sort of thing. And, you know, their thing was that, you know, we're not going to get to see, you know, the 0 days or whatever that people are putting. And it's like, well, think about all the, you know, women and minorities who obviously are not even allowed in this group, let's be honest, and, you know, would either have to put up with watching this all the time, if they could even get in order to, like, see this security research that apparently is so great that, you know, we have to look the other way about a bunch of hate. Like, you know, that's just another barrier to entry that's keeping, you know, all the white dudes, like, the best in the industry, so to speak.
And that shouldn't be the way it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm you know, I'm part of the staff on B-Sides Delaware. So like, I know Josh, I'm friends with Josh. No, he did not look wonderful in that interview. And honestly, like, I mean, I'll say it, like, I think some of the stuff that he said was tone deaf and just wrong. You know, on the one hand, I can understand, I sort of like, and this is don't yell at me. I sort of understand the argument of being in the group to get the information, but you're right. Like on the other hand, it's like, like you have to speak up and say something. Like these people are acting like assholes. Like stop doing that.
Absolutely.
And it's hard. It's,
it is hard. It's incredibly hard to stand up.
You probably know better than I do.
Get it usually like, honestly, whenever I stand up for something, most of the time, I'm glad that I did it, but I'm also like, my life would be so much easier if I would just keep my mouth shut and just mind my own business.
But on the other side of that, right? So one thing that ignoring hate or ignoring immorality does is normalize it.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 little kids, right? And if they do something that is wrong, or if they do something that might hurt someone else or hurt themselves or offend somebody, if I don't tell them it's wrong, they're never going to know, right? So you got to tell them.
Yeah.
Well, with adults who have decided that it's okay to spread hate, if people don't resist that, then they think it's okay to keep spreading their hate because no one's stopping them. Or maybe they just fuel on the hate. I don't know. But the point is, if a group of people just say, fine, it's here, but we're going to participate because we get some benefit out of it. And then the hate continues, and none of those members say that hate's not all right, then it's just going to keep going. And worst case, the people who are there for the good and don't like the hate might start to think that the hate is okay, and that's not good either.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a lot of this like play I saw at the Fringe Festival in Prague, which I know is like completely unrelated, but really it is. So when I was in Prague, like when I was in grad school, I was in like a summer school trip around Europe thing. And we were in Prague, and like the English speaking like Fringe Festival was there, and they were really cheap plays, so we would all like go and see them. And they had this one, and it was like a one-man show about Hitler, which so he did his like Hitler speech as Hitler, and you saw it, and it was like that. And then afterwards, it's like the play is over, but the guy like sits down on his chair and just starts shooting the shit with us, and he just starts normal, and then he starts to tell like the kind of like funny off-color jokes that pretty much everybody says and nobody thinks anything of, and it just builds and it builds and it builds, and it gets to the point where he's like really offensive, and like people are walking out and people are shouting at him and stuff, and it's like, do you really believe this? And it's like, it just kept going and going, and then at the end of it, the like Nazi symbol comes back on and he's like, and that's how you let me in, and it goes black because nobody, it's kind of how it even started there. It's like it starts small, it starts innocuous, so you get used to it. So, and then it builds and builds, and it just seems normal. So it's hard to stand up for anything because people jump down your throat. But if it just becomes normalized, and that's how, these sort of radicalized groups start.
That's brilliant.
That is brilliant.
That whole thing was part of the act. That was all part of the act. Brilliant.
You thought the act was over, and it wasn't. It was all part of it. Wow.
It was all like he was showing like how that's like the whole like Hitler speech sounded ridiculous. That was like it was like actual text from one of his speeches. But then when he sat down and like started doing that, it like actually made sense how like this person could actually get to that point. So like all these years later, I mean, this was like, I was in grad school like years and years ago, and then I like still remember it. It was like one of the most like moments of like my entire life, like watching that.
I know you've gone through sort of ups and downs and left and rights, and I mean shit's been good and shit's been bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm happy I met you years ago. I think you've done brilliant work since then. Your book is amazing. I got it. I sort of went through it myself, and I mean, the first thing I thought was like, my son needs to have this. This is
thank you.
He needs this book, and he's got it.
I really need to read the book. I have it, and I started it, and then like everything else in life, I got distracted.
You don't do well with books.
No, I don't. Can you make an audiobook? Would it work in an audiobook? Probably not.
I would love to do an audiobook. Can we get like Stephen Fry to read it? And now click the start button.
Yeah, right.
I kind of want Stephen Fry to read your book now. That's I don't know what I'm not sure what would come out of that, but it would be brilliant.
Use Metasploit. Set source.
I can't wait for the second edition. I'm a Patreon supporter already.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So I mean, pimp your stuff. Like you got a Patreon for the book. What else you got out there?
So yeah, I have a Patreon for my book. So it's just Patreon, however you spell it, .com/ Jordan Weidman, my name. And yeah, I am using those funds, like time I spend working on the book. I'm not doing consulting, so I don't starve to death. Like and you do get like perks, like you get in the acknowledgments if you give anything. There's like exclusive content and things like that. Early access to the labs. You can even like help me edit, and there's even like a really high one if you give me like a really lot of money. Like it'll be like your payment for me to come speak at your event, or I can like privately mentor you and stuff. So I mean, it's not just giving me money, so it will get the book out faster. So I have that, and I really appreciate everybody, including you, who has supported me with that. Like I said, I also have a product company. So if you're bored and just want to like try out a product and suggest things you think you would really like to see in it, I'd really love to hear from anybody. We do free trials, and they're online. You don't have to download anything or anything. You don't have to download the 7 gig VM anymore. You just, we give you an online account. So if anybody wants to help me make my product better, if anybody works at either a security consulting company or their on-site security at an organization, and that they'd like to bring mobility into their security testing, I'd love to talk to you, see how I could help. Also, if you're building any mobile security products from the defensive side, I can certainly help there as well, see how you're doing against like the real attacks and help you make it better. So if anybody who's listening is working in any of those spaces, again, I'd love to help. At this point, I really just, want to help, by finding new partners and making my product better. So, don't think it's going to be a ton of money, because it's not, because I really just want to, help people at this point. And I'm able to do that because, I'm the founder of the company, so I can do whatever I want, within reason.
It's good to be the king.
Yeah, it's good to be the king. But also heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Right.
So those are the big, I mean, certainly if you need pen testing or security training or anything like that. I also, very, very soon we'll have out, hopefully the end of the month is coming, but hopefully by the end of the month, we're doing like the final tests on it. A lot of people are still using the first book, and I do have a repo up with like all the ISOs and the Kali that's set up and everything, and all the vulnerable apps, because like some of the places where they were online have died since. So I have a repo if you are like setting up the book still, but we are putting up online labs for it. This is going to be a tie-in with book 2, where we're going to have all your labs are going to be available online, so we can do like Active Directory attacks and things like that are a little harder to set up in your own lab, especially if you're a beginner. But kind of as the trial of that, we built one for all the labs in book 1. So that'll be out soon, and you'll be able to just sign up. There will be a free trial on that. So, if you're good at getting through books, you can do it for free. But, I am actually using somebody else's platform, so we do actually have to charge money eventually. But yeah, it has everything for the first book on there, and there's also again going to be additional exercises, which I mean that's the goal with book 2 is you have the exercises that are in the book, but then it can organically grow so you can continue learning. So yeah, we're putting it up first for book 1 basically, so we can get all the kinks out of it before book 2 launches. So look out for that. I know it's a pain to set up your own lab, especially like when some of the links don't work. So, we listen and we're fixing all that. So yeah, that's really all I can think of that I'm pimping right now. So yeah, look out for book 2, look out for our labs. If you want book 2 faster, please donate to my Patreon. And yeah, if you have any mobile security testing needs, definitely reach out about my product. If you need just pen testing or training anything, reach out about my consulting. So yeah.
Okay, and what is the best way for people to reach out to you for any of these?
Well, I have lots of different ways. I mean, email is probably the easiest. So I'm Georgia at Bulb Security, BULB, like the light bulb security.com. Also Georgia at Shavira.com, which, like I say, is hard to say or spell. So it's SHEVIRAH. Even I have to think about it. But yeah, just send it to Georgia at Bulb Security because then you can spell it. I also have Twitter, just my name, Georgia Weidman. So at Georgia Weidman, my DMs are open. I do try to check those fairly regularly. So, you can at me or DM me. I'm on other social media, but Twitter is probably the fastest one, or you can friend me on Facebook. I don't look at LinkedIn as much as I should.
No one does.
Yeah. I'm always feel terrible. I'm like, I have 5 million new messages. Most of them are about people saying like happy work anniversary anyway, though. So,
or you've been found in 28 searches.
Yeah.
I get those too.
Yeah. So yeah. And if I don't write back after you write me, please don't take it personally, because sometimes I miss stuff because I'm not perfect. It's totally not you, it's me. And just, ping me again and say, Georgia, answer me. And I will.
Good call. All right. Well, Jason, do you have anything you want to close with?
No. It was awesome talking to you. And
yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
Chat. It's been a good chat. You're welcome back whenever.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for having me, and I hope you guys have fun with the news. I'm actually going to take off and go back to work. My Carbon Black keynote slides are due by the end of the day today. That was probably 5, but I don't think it's the end of the day until I go to bed. So there.
The end of the day is midnight, obviously. So. All right. Well, good luck with that.
Always times to add more memes.
Yes. All right. Bye.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Yep.
Night.
Thanks. All right, that was fun. Now we should play transition music, right?
Yeah, push the button.
There we go. One of these days, we'll figure out how the professionals actually have time slots set up on their shows so that things like don't overrun. We're an hour and 16 minutes in, and we're just finished with the interview.
What's a time slot? I don't understand. Hey, news.
Weird stuff. News. Yeah,
I
don't know that I have any real announcements to go with tonight. I didn't look up any reviews. We got a couple more YouTube followers. That's about it.
Well, we had YouTube followers, and then YouTube Hangouts decided to do its thing. And now we're on the wrong channel. And
what a pain in the butt. Yeah. So anybody who's watching us live tonight, which I don't know if anybody's really caught up. I see a couple people in the chat. That's cool. Well, we're on my personal YouTube account because I couldn't get the channel to start the Hangout on air because of some weird redirect loop that YouTube kept sending me into. So if any of you watching work for YouTube, go fix your crap. Sorry, if you work for Google, right? Google owns YouTube. Yeah. So yeah, Hangouts on air is just broken as hell. So hopefully by next time we record, that's fixed. Then we can go back to publishing these on the Iron Sysadmin channel instead of my own personal YouTube account. Because no one's going to find this crap. All right. Well, I think we'll cut the chat down and we'll get right to the news because, eventually I'd like to go to bed tonight.
Okay,
I know it's weird. Sure. I know it's a strange thing. Sleeping.
Yeah, sleep? What's that?
Playing the second transition really did seem silly, but it's all about the format, okay?
It's all about the format? Okay.
Yeah. Totally. We have to have a transition between the middle section of the show and the news. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
So it's funny. I mean, this whole YouTube sign-in thing. I'm having this problem right now. I have one Gmail account that's it's a G Suite account. So it has admin privileges and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. And then I have my normal user account. it won't let me log into my user account because my user account is not a G Suite account, and I can't get it to redirect me to the normal login. So
Yeah.
I totally wanted to post stupid comments on the YouTube page,
And you
but
couldn't
I
get
can't
there.
because it won't let me log in.
Yeah,
So,
that's exactly it. I was trying to switch. I mean, I don't want to get too much into the mechanics of YouTube, but basically, channels are like sub accounts of an account, right? And all of my sub accounts, all of my channels, I can switch to them. But as soon as I try to start Hangouts on air, it goes into this weird redirect loop because I think it's trying to authenticate as me instead of the channel, and then it goes into this loop, and it doesn't open. So hopefully
it's
they
rough to
fix
be a
that.
YouTube star.
It is.
It is.
It's
Yeah.
more like I have YouTube ADD and I have way too many channels, is what it comes down to. Anyway,
All right.
we have news to talk
the
about.
news.
Let's do that.
News, yes. So last week was Cybergeddon. All of the cybers are broken. You should just turn your computers off, throw them in the garbage. Don't worry, the dumpster's already on fire, and just go about banging your drum and living in caves.
So I don't want to say I told you so, but you may remember when Spectre and what was the other one? Ghost? Was it Ghost?
Meltdown.
Ghost was something else.
Something else. Yeah. Meltdown.
So when Spectre and Meltdown showed up, here on the show we said, just wait. There will be more. Hackers have now figured out I can attack what? The CPU? Awesome.
Yep.
Well, here we are, guys. Here we are.
Yeah. And Intel falls again. So the first couple links here are sort of all CPU attacks. So the first one is a site MDS attacks, because yet again, if you're going to find a vulnerability in something, make sure you do it the proper way. Find the vulnerability, do all of the research, alert the proper parties, and before you announce it, please make sure you have a proper name and an icon to describe your attack.
I don't.
So we've got MDS attacks, specifically Riddle or Riddle. Maybe Rogue In-Flight Data Load is what it stands for, and Fallout. So both of these are, if I understand correctly, I'm not a CPU expert, by the way. Both of these are, I believe, based on the same the hell's the name of that attack called? Speculative execution. It's right at the beginning of the page. They're both speculative execution attacks.
It's like the fourth word, speculative.
Yeah. So
one of those words. By the way,
if I understand correctly, this basically has to do with the CPU guessing or running multiple pipelines at the same time of the data in an attempt to sort of guess what's going to happen next.
Yeah, so that's what
you're tricking the CPU. Yeah, that's what you're tricking the CPU into giving the wrong data back.
Yeah, I read all up on what the heck speculative execution was back when Spectre hit, because that was the same deal. You're basically trying to now I can't remember exactly what the attack vector was, but it had to do with these speculative branches in the CPU, and you could use it to predict data or something.
Right. So there are 4 new exploits. I guess only 2 of them have names, or they're sort of the parent names for a couple different types of attacks. And there's also a second attack that was reported, I think, independently, called Zombie Load. And what's interesting about Zombie Load is
it's got a great logo.
It does, yeah. And this is why they go with logos. This is actually a pretty impressive logo. I'm impressed.
Somebody put work into that.
Yeah. Somebody with a lot more artistic talent than myself. So basically, what Zombie Load does is it sort of pulls data from the cache, I guess, that shouldn't be available, and shows it to you. So you can pull things like browser history, keys, passwords, etc. And as with Spectre and Meltdown, these are full service exploits. They work on your personal computer and the cloud.
Oh, good.
Yes. And also, as with Spectre and Meltdown, fixing them is a CPU hit. So there's a.
Yep.
I don't have it anywhere specifically, but I believe it was somewhere between a 5 and 10% hit on CPU to when the patches were added.
I don't have the article. Maybe I'll have to try to find it. But apparently, one of the outcomes of these 2 new attacks is that Intel is considering ditching hyperthreading.
Really? I had not heard that.
Yeah, I'll have to try to find the article.
These are so I didn't cover this before. These are Intel attacks. These do not affect AMD. They do not affect ARM, and they don't affect other processors that are non-Intel.
Remember all those years ago, all of us cool kids were running AMDs instead of Intels?
Yep.
And then eventually we all fell onto the Intel bandwagon because the prices came in line.
Yeah, that's not to say that there are no vulnerabilities in those processors. This is much like the Mac, Windows, Linux landscape, where you know what, Microsoft has the market share and attackers go after it. So Intel has the market share here. They're going after the Intel processors. Give it some time. AMD and ARM will both fall. It's inevitable. So moving on, since we've talked about how much market share Windows and Mac have, Linux has a nice remote code execution vulnerability. That has been in place since version.
It's like 2 something, wasn't it?
2 something, yeah, forever ago. It might be 2.0.
This is bleeping computer, by the way, folks.
Right. Oh, yeah, attribution. So there is a patch out for this. I looked at it. The patch is quite literally a 15-character change in the TCP.C source code in the Linux kernel.
Wow.
I don't know if this article goes into it very much. This is not an easy attack. This is a very, very difficult attack. It is, if you can pull it off, you own everything. But it's not something that's simple to exploit. And some of the speculation or some of the commentary that's come out since this has been reported is that they're not sure that having this marked as such a critical vulnerability is worth it, because it's not something that Joe Blow can just go out and take advantage of. But in my worldview, it's remote code execution. I think those are the ones that are, regardless of how hard it is to exploit it, those are critical. Go patch that.
Yeah, well, I mean, most CVEs have not just a criticality score, but they also have a ease of exploit score. So this seems like a perfect time to,
Yeah. They have
it's hard to exploit, but it's really bad if you do.
It's an exploitability score of 2.2, and the impact score is 5.9. I'm not sure what the max is for those, but it's low. It's hard to exploit, but if you can exploit it, like I said, you own the world.
I believe it's up to 10. The scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah,
or 0 to 10.
It's
maybe
not,
I'm wrong.
It's not trivial, but it is what it is.
I mean, remote code execution in the kernel seems like a pretty big deal.
Yep. And so continuing with the theme of the day, which is the world's on fire. This one actually came out today.
Oh, you mean we're current for a change?
Yeah, we're current for a change. There's a new sensor calibration attack on both Android and iOS devices.
Hey, you forgot. It's from ZDNet.
Yes, it's from ZDNet. Oh, doing that attribution thing again. I'm bad at this. This is why I am not a reporter. So Android and iOS devices impacted by new sensor calibration attack. Now, I think it's a stretch to call this an attack.
Yeah, it's more like fingerprinting, don't you think?
Yeah, it is. It's basically passive fingerprinting at that.
They even call it new device fingerprinting technique.
Yeah. So the if you've had a mobile device of some sort, there's a way you sort of calibrate the sensors that are in there. You used to do it, if I remember correctly, in the old Android tablets. You actually had to touch the different parts of the screen to sort of calibrate the sensors. A lot of that is done in the factory now, but those calibrations can be retrieved remotely by browsers and applications, and there's a pattern to them, so you can identify, just like you can identify like the type of a browser, or if you're receiving traffic from a machine based on how the packets are built, you can sometimes detect what the OS is underlying.
Yeah.
This is the same sort of thing, and this lets you identify what sort of a device it is, and then track that device. And I don't know. It doesn't really seem to say whether or not it's unique enough to identify per person or per device, but you can at least identify the type of device.
So basically, I mean, what did that really get you, right? So you can across the wire figure out that I'm on an iPhone 8. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess.
Like, I don't understand how that's even all that. I guess if you could use that data to somehow then craft an exploit that works against that or something, like what?
There it is. I found it. It is a unique ID, so it is uniquely identifying each device.
Oh, okay. So it's not like, I know you're on an iPhone 8. I know you're on this iPhone 8.
Right. Apple has patched it.
So you could then track someone from website to website or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. Whether they're in incognito mode or not. So Apple added random noise to the calibration output in iOS 12.12, which was released a couple months ago.
Cool.
Android is I don't know what they're doing. They're still investigating, apparently.
Android is hoping that they can use the data to track their users better.
Maybe they already were, and they're sort of upset that somebody figured it out. All right, so I'm gonna reorder things because I'm a pain. Continuing on with the world is burning. Microsoft released a patch for a bug that is wormable in RDS. This was this was last week. Last week was a really, really bad week for InfoSec and systems people in general. It's about patching all the things, no matter what the OS is. So RDS had a nice vulnerability where you could remotely execute code through RDS, which is the remote desktop service, on Windows 7, Windows Server. Oh yeah, and Windows XP.
Is this the worm one you were talking about?
Yeah. So Microsoft actually released a patch for Windows XP after saying they were no longer going to patch XP. Apparently, it's that bad.
I heard about this on the news, like the normal everyday morning news.
Right.
Like not technology news, just like, hey, Microsoft patched Windows XP. Like, what?
Yeah. The normal, something that people like you and me go, wait, isn't that out of? Wait,
yeah.
What?
One. Why am I hearing about a patch for Windows XP on the morning news? 2, I thought they didn't support that anymore.
Yeah. Yep. So, hey, here's a thought. If you have RDS, stop exposing it to the internet.
What an idea. Now, in the case of a worm, though, that could easily go tearing through like a server environment or something. Where remote desktop is open for management, right?
Right. But again, why do you have remote desktop open to the internet?
Well, no, it doesn't have to be open to the internet.
Well, right. If it's on your internal network.
Right. If somehow it gets into your internal network. I'm not saying that's an easy feat. I'm saying that it could be a bad thing. That's all.
True. Yeah, as a secondary sort of add-on attack.
Yeah.
But stop exposing RDS to the internet. Shodan says you still are, so don't lie to me.
Yeah, Shodan still. Yeah, obviously
yep.
there's a bunch.
Yep. Now, in a slight change to the horrible news of the past couple weeks, we've solved security.
Oh yeah, how's that?
So, who was this? University of Michigan announced that they have created an unhackable processor architecture.
Well, good.
They called it Morpheus because the Matrix is awesome. The Matrix is awesome. Basically,
is this kind of like Unbreakable?
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking it is. What it does is it reshuffles, so it encrypts and reshuffles the memory, I guess, or the way that you access memory every 20 or every 50 milliseconds. So it's kind of rearranging the memory constantly, which makes me think there's going to be some sort of a CPU hit there. But
yeah, maybe it's that fast. It doesn't matter.
This is like ASLR, address space
layout
randomization. Yeah. So it's basically ASLR on like speed, where instead of like ASLR today is it sort of randomizes things and it's done.
Yeah.
This says, hey, I'm random, and I did it again and again and again and again and again and again. But the part of this that bothers me is like they say this is unhackable, and of course that's just a call to action.
Yeah, exactly.
But the part that bothers me is like something has to know how to get to the memory, right? You can't just have random memory.
Why not? You just have to. It's like when you drop a deck of cards, and whenever you need to find the card you need, you just shuffle through them until you find the one you need. You don't have to know where it is. You just find it.
Right. But in this case, you only have 50 milliseconds to do it. I feel like
processors are fast. They can do this kind of stuff.
If I was an attacker, my immediate thought would be, "Oh, I'm just going to go attack the thing that tells me where the memory is."
Yeah, where's the table that tells me where the memory is?
Right. Like that's my answer. But hey,
the table is also unhackable. Didn't you read
it? That's randomized too?
It says yeah, so the table is unhackable, and then the table is random, and then the other random, you have to hash the algorithm of how many random things there are, and that's the table, and then then that table is also random, but there's like a pigeon that flies in with a sticky note and shows you. Okay, I've gone off the rails.
You this sounds like a Kickstarter.
There's a pigeon involved in.
Yeah, this sounds like it. Okay, everybody needs to support Nate's new Kickstarter.
The pigeon CPU.
Pigeon CPUs.
Pigeon address space randomization.
So anyway, this is a thing now. And of course, it goes into depth about telling you how awesome this new ASLR randomization thing is, and
it's got a picture of Lawrence Fishburne at the header. So I mean,
yep, and doesn't tell you at all what the architecture of the CPU is or what it's compatible with. So
no, that's because nothing's compatible with it yet, and obviously Microsoft is going to jump on, and so is Linux and everybody. We're those Intel AMD war. That's the thing of the past. We're going to all be on unhackable Morpheus processors by the end of the year.
Okay, I'm game.
That's my prediction.
I'll take which color pill am I taking?
Red, the red pill.
Red pill. Okay, sounds good.
See, really what this means is that we're all in the Matrix, and processors aren't even real anyway. There is no processor.
I thought that was a spoon.
Yeah, I know, but see, I'm trying to make it about the article and
okay.
Pigeons.
Got it. Right. Articles. So Baltimore is apparently being held hostage.
Yeah, man, you included way too much news tonight.
I did. You
guys are getting all the news tonight, and we're tearing through it in record time. It's been like
we are
like 20 minutes.
Guess what happened to Baltimore?
Ransomware. Spin the wheel of compromise. By the way, the wheel of compromise is all ransomware.
Yep. So they've been infected with Robinhood.
That's the best name for ransomware ever.
Yeah, and they
We also
want.
by the way.
What's so this happened apparently 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And
they're refusing to pay, which is good on them.
And yeah, Baltimore refused to pay. So the 13 Bitcoin ransom, which was $76,000 when they got infected, is now up to $102,000 because the price of Bitcoin has gone up a lot.
Bitcoin has gone up. Wow.
Yeah. So
wow.
Yeah, I guess Baltimore's kind of screwed at the
moment. So what they need to do is ride the wave until Bitcoin drops again. Then they can pay less.
That could do that.
I mean,
Bitcoin's doing interesting things these days. It's bouncing back and forth between $7,000 and $8,000 a coin.
Wow.
So I think a lot of this has to do with our next story, which we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, Bitcoin's don't buy now. Whatever you do not buy Bitcoin right now.
Oh, but obviously it's going to just keep going up.
No,
right?
I'm not so sure about that. Maybe, but I'm not so sure about that.
That was from Slashdot, by the way, folks.
That was Slashdot. Okay,
you missed it again. Did you report on any of the other ones that where they were from? While I was busy dealing with my daughter checking in the door and my wife outside the window.
Oh, see, I flipped between the screens and I missed all of that. I would have made comments.
You did.
Okay, from CNBC, I did it. This next one.
You did. Good job. Good job.
So the U.S. is considering blacklisting another massive Chinese vendor. This time, Hikvision.
I'd never heard of these people when you told me about this.
Yeah. The difference is that you may not have heard of them, but I can almost guarantee you've used hardware from them.
Yeah, see, they do like surveillance cameras or something.
There's a lot of surveillance camera stuff that they do. I know that a surveillance system that we had installed in an office was all Hikvision. The cameras had chips from them.
And, I've never dealt with a security system, so maybe that's why.
So this follows on the tail of the U.S. blacklisting Huawei.
Yeah.
Which I'm not. The Huawei saga is so weird. I mean, we go back months ago when the CFO got arrested in like Canada or something, and then China responded by arresting a bunch of Canadian citizens, and it sort of went back and forth. And this has actually turned more recently into a trade battle.
And now they're talking about national security and So I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you do, 3-4 years ago, maybe longer, there was that whole scandal where Huawei devices had built-in ransomware or spyware. They were like an Android device or something.
Yep.
Is this fallout from way back then? Or is this literally just political BS?
I'm not sure if that. So I think the CFO getting arrested is a different. I think that's different than the current fallout of them being blacklisted. There's some commonality there in that there's a fear that the devices that Huawei is selling are compromised by design.
Yeah.
Specifically,
well, I mean that was exactly what the deal with that Android device was.
But the current
design,
right? The past, I don't know, couple of weeks of Huawei in the news, I think is purely political. The government fighting with China about tariffs.
Because it's really weird how they're focusing specifically on Chinese companies.
Yeah.
When there are lots
that's the trade war.
China is sort of maybe arguably the biggest tech giant, but the whole thing seems very politically charged.
Well, the politically charged piece of it right now, I think, is this whole trade war that's going on.
Yeah,
which is why, I mean, yes, Huawei was sort of the whipping boy to begin with, and I think potentially by right they should have been because of some of the stuff that happened with them on the security side. Yeah. But I think that has been a convenient. They're a convenient target now that we've moved into this whole trade war thing.
Right.
between the White House and China's government. But Huawei is not. I mean, Huawei has never. I mean, Huawei hasn't been innocent for a long time. I remember when I first got into, sort of into carrier-based tech back in, I don't know, this is 20 years ago. There was a big thing with Huawei, where they had copied Cisco's iOS, or reverse engineered it, or something to do with Cisco and their iOS, and how Huawei basically had the exact same thing on their routers.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal back then. Like, this was a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
Soon followed, like a year later, by everybody having Cisco iOS interface, but whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I've known about Huawei from a long time ago.
Yeah, a lot of places mimic iOS because it's what network engineers are used to, and they want you to feel at home on their command line. But yeah, I mean, maybe there was more to Huawei. Maybe they thought there was actual, literal, like, copyright infringement there, and not just them trying to be the same. I don't know. I don't know anything about that particular fight.
Yeah, I think back when that was going on originally, Cisco either thought they had a copyright on their interface, or I mean, I'd have to do some digging to figure it out, but I think what came of that whole thing was that it was sort of revealed that you couldn't copyright an interface like that. And that's why a lot of other companies ended up with that interface. Either that, or
yeah, I mean,
or the other way, where they could copyright it, and Cisco has licensed it to, like, everybody in creation.
how do you copyright a command line interface, right? I mean, like, that's sort of at the core of all computing history.
I don't know. I do not know, but I know that years ago that was a thing.
So at any rate, Huawei and now Hikvision. I guess Huawei is already been what's the word I'm looking for? Blacklisted or whatever.
Blacklisted, yep.
And I guess Hikvision is next on target. I did hear, I think this morning or the day before, that they're talking about rolling back a little bit of that blacklist so that companies that were already dealing with Huawei could continue to, in some aspects, but I don't know the details.
Yeah, there's another article I stumbled over, that had said that I think Intel, AMD, and a bunch of other companies had stopped, had sort of issued a stop order of any dealings with Huawei at all, based on the blacklist. I think that was from yesterday or today. So
Google's worked pretty closely with Huawei. A number of the Pixel and Nexus devices were Huawei. It's hard to say, Huawei hardware. So, and I remember when this news article came out, it was right around the time that Google was starting to use them as a hardware vendor, and I'm like, wow, I've lost a bit of faith in in the Nexus line. But
yeah,
there's been no evidence that
Reuters reported on the 19th that Google suspended business with Huawei of anything that was not open source.
Yeah, I heard that too. So basically, what that means to anyone who's not familiar with the Android ecosystem is anything that is like Google branded stuff. So open source is Android. Android itself is open source, but the apps that make it Google, like the Google Play Store, the like Google Maps, all of Google's proprietary stuff that runs on Android to make it a Google Android device, they're not going to be allowed to use them. Now there's ways around that, but you have to root your running or whatever, and you have to trick it into running these things. So all the things that give you the Android ecosystem on top of Android are all Google's. So if Google says you can't run them, then you have an Android device that you're basically, you don't have an app store, you don't have, all the Google add-ons. So that is kind of devastating for a vendor who was previously in Google's good graces. So
yeah, and I mean, we've been talking about Huawei and Hikvision, but I mean the larger focus here is that this I don't know if it's officially being called a trade war or not, but I mean the talk is that there's a 20% tariff on goods from China now. Everything is going to go up in price. I mean, think about what you have in, that you get day to day. I mean, a lot of this stuff comes from China. I know at least a couple Kickstarters that I saw have canceled. Like they outright said, like, look, with the tariff changes and the trade war, like we can't do this for the price that we were looking at doing this, and it sucks. But like,
a lot of people depend on inexpensive electronics out of China, whether you like it or not. I mean, everybody wants to tout, oh, American made and all. Well, American made comes with a price. It might be quality, it might be local, it might be giving Americans jobs, but Americans are expensive.
And even the expensive stuff, a lot of that comes out of China too.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
You look at stuff from, like, I think Samsung comes out of China.
If you
Apple comes out of China.
If you take the expensive Chinese stuff, and I don't mean Chinese stuff in a negative connotation. I mean, if you take the stuff that's made in China, like the iPhone, for example, that's made in China, right?
Yeah.
Expensive. Yeah. iPhone's an expensive device.
Yep.
If you were to take that and manufacture to the US, it would probably be twice or three times or even more expensive than it is now, even with the Apple markup.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, Americans want to get paid more. I don't want to turn this into a big political thing. I could say all sorts of stuff, but
yeah, no, I mean, it's really it's not a political thing. It's a culture thing. The Chinese people their culture allows them to be paid like they are. It's simple as that. So
I don't know if it's I don't know. I don't know that I would agree it's the culture, but
if they're willing to work for peanuts,
I would say the circumstances in China means that a lot of the people there get paid a lot less to do a lot more, and yes, it benefits Americans a lot and other countries, I'm sure, but I don't know that it's right. In a lot of cases, I would say it's not right. But the different, like, if they got paid the same as Americans wanted to get paid for that same job, like, the cost on everything is going to go up. Well, and I think at the end of the day, maybe it should. But
when it's trying to come down to whether it's right or wrong, I think it depends on whether they're being paid enough to live for the work they're doing. Because I think one of the reasons that Americans get paid more is because they're not willing to do that amount of work for a smaller wage, and because of that, everything's more expensive here. Right? When a population is paid better, everything's more expensive. When they're paid less, they can afford less, therefore everything's less expensive. Right? Like, at its core. No? You're thinking hard.
I'm ill prepared for this debate.
Yeah, no, and I'm not claiming to be some economist, but basically, if someone offered me a third of my wage for doing the exact same thing that I do now, I would starve to death, because in the U.S., I have to make what I make to live.
To live the lifestyle that you have.
To live the lifestyle that I have, right. I couldn't just be like, okay, yeah, totally, I'll work for a third of my pay. But then, like, I won't have a place to live, or I'll have to turn off all of my utilities, or I won't be able to buy food, or I'll have to start making some really hard choices. Where if I was making a third of my pay all along, and everyone around me makes a third of what they make now, like, everything has to be less expensive. Otherwise, everybody's starving. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know enough about China. I don't think that's entirely the reality there, but
yeah,
like, because a lot of these people, my understanding from what I've read and what I've been told is you have, like, say, take Foxconn. Foxconn's always the interesting whipping boy. And of course, Foxconn only works on Apple. Although, newsflash, companies like Dell also have their stuff built there.
Yeah.
The people that
a lot of to build your own machines with.
Right. A lot of the workers at Foxconn, the way that they've set things up is they move away from the towns that the villages that they lived in. They move to where a Foxconn factory is, and their work at Foxconn, part of their wage goes to pay for the bed that they have at the Foxconn facility. And they live there. They eat they eat there. They work there, and they take all the money that they make and send it back to their family in the village so that their family can live, but they're living arguably a not wonderful life. And a lot of these work, they work 12 hours a day,
This
7
sounds
days a
really,
week.
this sounds really similar to like the old mining industry, local to
Right.
us,
Yeah, exactly.
where you worked in the mine and you lived at a house that was owned by the mine and you shopped at the store that was owned by the mine, and
Right.
it was all on company credit, and by the end of the week all the salary you made was actually not enough to cover all the money you spent, so you were just in debt further every week.
Right.
I don't know if it's quite
Right.
that bad in China, but
No,
it's
I don't.
real similar.
I don't think it's quite that bad.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I've read and heard, but it's not ideal. And I mean, China doesn't have the greatest track record in the world of human rights either. So, like, there's a lot that needs to be fixed. In the U.S., like, we're incredibly privileged for what we do.
I mean, I want to be clear. I wasn't trying to say everything's sunshine and roses in China. I'm just saying,
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. Like,
everyone's making less. Things must be less expensive. Otherwise,
if that's
everybody will be starving to death.
Right. If that's basically what happens across the majority of the population, or at least a large majority of the population, then it's considered, normal by their standards. And you're right. Like, the costs of things are a little bit lower, but I don't think, they're not getting the same quality stuff either. Like, they may be getting lower quality products. Again, I don't live in China, so I'm not 100% sure, but
maybe we should stop making judgments about China.
I'm not trying to make a judgment. I mean, I don't necessarily want to make a judgment, but I think like, where this whole tariff thing with China, honestly, I don't think has anything to do with the average Chinese citizen. This is a government versus government thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think it benefits the government, and I don't think it benefits the citizen on either side. I think both sides are going to suffer, because you think if there's a 20% tariff, our prices go up, we buy less stuff. We buy less stuff, China makes less stuff. China makes less stuff, they have less jobs. More people don't have jobs, right? So, like, it's going to hurt both sides.
And all the tariff is doing is going into the government's pocket, right? That's what a tariff is. It's like a tax.
I believe so, yes. So
it's the government saying it costs you X to import into this country. Where does that money go? I don't know. I always assumed it went back to the government.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like, the cost of things is going to go up, and it's starting to hurt already, and I think it's just going to get worse. We'll see. Maybe there's some grand strategy and things are going to be wonderful, but I don't hold much hope for that. So, I've also ran out of news.
We're finally out of news.
I can go find some more if you want.
I do want to mention, I didn't bring it up in the chat. Yes, I went to Summit. I took a bunch of notes during a bunch of talks and a bunch of keynotes, and I have not had a chance to actually correlate all that into content. It'll probably end up as articles on my blog and maybe content for Iron System. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but I did take a bunch of notes. A lot of really cool stuff happened at Summit. Rel 8's out.
So your next project is to run a Rel 8 server with Podman, deploying all the containers that make OpenStack work with OpenShift?
Yeah, there you go.
Kubernetes.
You've got enough of the buzzwords in there.
Yeah.
But no, I did see some interesting talks. The keynotes were pretty cool. I keep forgetting how to pronounce his name, but the head of Microsoft, Satya, is it Satya?
Oh, Satya.
Satya
Nadella.
He was on stage with Jim Whitehurst, which was pretty cool. God, I'm still kicking myself. I missed a chance to hang out at the Summit party and chat with Jim Whitehurst. Literally face to face.
Maybe no one have yourself to blame.
Maybe no one cares about that. But basically, at the end of Summit, like a lot of conferences this size, there's a party, right? They had a couple bands and there were drinks and free food and stuff. And at the end of the day, I was just tired. And every Summit party I'd been to in the past had been okay, but not awesome. So I'm I'm just going to go back to the hotel. I'm going to hang out. I'm going to fill my laptop a little bit. I'm going to get some rest because I got a long drive tomorrow. So I went back. Well, being part of the Red Hat Accelerators, we had special access to a private tent at, I think there was a private tent, or anyway, I think that's where these guys were at. The rest of the accelerators went to the party, and freaking we have a Slack channel that we all chat on. In the Slack channel start showing up pictures of all the people I've been hanging out with at Summit and Jim Whitehurst. Like,
yeah, you missed out on the inside line on what's going on at Red Hat and how to get great cheap tickets from Delta.
Oh,
he
right.
Was he was the COO of Delta.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So at any rate, yeah, I missed out on that. That would have been cool. Maybe I could have talked him into being a guest on our show.
Hey, you got that super secret access. You can still do it.
Yeah, right. So that was fun. But yeah, some cool talks. There's some cool stuff coming out with OpenShift version 4. That's really starting to mature as a platform. Yeah. I talked to a number of people about OpenStack and about running it and what sort of manpower it takes, and everyone pretty much agreed that a small team can't run OpenStack. So I think my dreams of one day running OpenStack are destroyed.
Maybe.
That's a shame.
Automation. It's all you need. All you need is automation.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's with automation, man. It's like it's deployed with Ansible and whatever, but they said like the care and feeding for OpenStack is just astronomical.
Well, then
this came from like Red Hat's IT. I saw a talk where Red Hat's IT was moving from a traditional infrastructure to OpenStack with OpenShift on top of it. And so, of course, like that's a thing I've wanted to do for a long time. So I went to the talk and I talked to them afterward, and he's like, "Yeah, don't do that. Like, unless you have a bigger team, don't do that."
I have faith in you. You can do this.
No, I feel like I probably could, but I may end up just like killing myself with the amount of work it is. And if I ever were to move on to a different position or like get hit by a bus or whatever, my employer would be totally just like at a loss for how to run this thing. So got to be realistic, I guess. Sounds like a cool project, but unless I'm working for a bigger team, it's not gonna pan out.
All right.
Anyway, that's not news, but it was chat, and I should have talked about it in the chat. So yeah, hopefully content from Summit will be coming.
All right. I think we may have gone over time.
Yeah, maybe. We're at 2 hours.
Yeah.
Not the first time we've done that.
Maybe it's time to kill it for the night.
Yeah, I think we're done for tonight. So, folks, thank you for tuning in. If you tuned in live, if you're listening to this after the fact, thank you for listening. It's been a while since we've done one of these. I'm out of the flow of how to do the outro.
Yeah, I mean, if you have suggestions, thoughts, comments, whatever, you can write to us at this email address that Nate will tell you right now.
What is it again? podcast@ironsysadmin.com, I think.
If you have suggestions on, if you have suggestions on guests, or you want to be a guest, I mean, reach out. We're happy to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. You can also hit us up on Twitter @ironsysadmin. You might know that already. YouTube.com/ironsysadmin podcast. If we can get the Google Hangouts on air to work next time.
Yeah, apologies for it not working.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to miss the live show tonight because, assuming that they've subscribed to the channel, they wouldn't have gotten the notification because we couldn't go live on the normal channel. So
right,
that's a shame.
Meanwhile, the people that are on your other channel are very confused.
Yeah, well, no, I don't produce anything on that. It's just me. So yeah, right. Anyway, we got a Slack. You can join it if you want to. ironsysadmin.com/Slack. We're on the socials. I already mentioned Twitter. We're also Iron Sysadmin on Facebook. And you can subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcasts. And I think that is a wrap.
We have a Patreon.
Oh, yes, Patreon. How did I miss that? That's the one where we might get money. You can find us on Patreon. You can support the show that way. ironsysadmin.com. No, patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Guys, it's getting late. It's been a long week.
Well, all you need to do now is add a redirect from ironsysadmin.com/Patreon to the same thing, and it works both ways.
I don't know why I didn't do that.
I just gave you the idea.
Yeah, brilliant idea. Brilliant. I'm sure that's going to up our Patreon from the $18 a month that we get to like, I don't know,
18
and a half.
19.
$18.50.
All right.
All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter @Gangriff. Jason, you want to share your handle?
I am at Xenophage.
And I think we're going to call it a night. Good night, everybody.
Night all.